Good morning, everyone. A big mabuhay around the world. I guess it's good evening for the Philippines and good morning for the USA. And I thought of what I'd do today because, well, I have to call the US pretty soon. Had some stuff that I canceled before I left the States, and now, like, they're saying it wasn't canceled or whatever, so I have to call. And what I'm going to use is basically probably the best phone plan that I've come across that I can keep on my phone and still call the US without switching SIM cards, without paying a lot of money, without a muss and fuss. And it seems to work really, really well. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to have to use it right after I do this live cast. And calling the U.S., especially with for your credit cards and things like that, the cell phone number seems to be a critical piece of identity that to prove who you are. Now, I guess if you can call up, there's other sort of things you can do. I guess there's passwords or magic code words or whatever kind of things like that. I didn't want to deal with that. So basically, I wanted to have a U.S. number and keep it while I moved to the Philippines so I could get, text messages, and I could also get phone messages from companies and stuff. Now, of course, you could always go the Skype route. You could buy a U.S. number, and I guess you could put your Skype thing. That might be a cheaper way to go. Maybe it's something to look into. And then there's also where you can take your U.S. phone and kind of add an international plan to it. And the data doesn't really seem to really go too well with any of these plans. They cap it like at 10 gigabytes. But as far as the phone calls, they seem relatively cheap, maybe 5 to 10 cents a minute, depending on whether you're calling a landline or a cell phone. And this thing, has reared its ugly head again because, I had the same problem when I first met Priscilla, not, communicating to the Philippines. And unfortunately, even at that time, the Philippines had the worst or one of the worst telecom networks, and also the most expensive in Asia. Nowadays, you can almost call China anywhere else in Asia for like maybe half a cent to a cent, something like that. Get it really cheap. Now, I don't know what the quality is, okay? But India, China, Vietnam, Thailand, anyone but the Philippines is super cheap. Um, and when I was calling Priscilla, I remember I had Verizon at the time, and I was just racking and racking up the phone bills, going crazy and crazy with the phone bills. And it was getting to be so expensive to call. And of course, we're doing the internet thing, but then it wasn't as good. I mean, you can do Facebook now. We can talk about that in a second. You can do Facebook Messenger, I guess. And there's also Viber and other kinds of things going on. But the network just wasn't as strong back then. And phone calls was really the best way. And so, I mean, even today, I bet you there are people still using Filipino phone cards. And you get them down at a Filipino grocery store, wherever you can find them. And in the U.S., I mean, in the Philippines, we call them sari-sari stores. But in the U.S., basically, they're Filipino stores. And you can go there and pick up a cheap phone card to the Philippines. And I tried a few of them. Some worked okay, some didn't. You have to call a certain number, which is kind of like a voice over internet protocol, VoIP, which is basically what everyone uses now anyway. We don't really have phone lines anymore. Dedicated phone lines are just basically fiber optic or over the internet kind of thing. So in any event, that's what I was using. Sorry about that. I was using that, and it worked or it didn't work, and it was still kind of expensive. We were talking every day, and her internet connection at home wasn't that great. Or I wanted to talk to her at work because that's when I got home. I didn't want to talk to her too late after she was finished with work. And so there was a company out there, and maybe they're still out there. I'm not really sure. Where these are kind of like private little phone networks, and you can get a number and dial into it. Oh no, I'm sorry. These were actually these are private cell networks, and you get like your own cell phone that would go on a certain frequency. And I'm sure it worked. It worked pretty good in Manila when she was working in Makati. But when she went home, man, you couldn't hear. In some places in Makati, you couldn't hear. And she was just the sweetest little thing, my wife. She would just be like, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. I'd be like, do you hear me? Uh-huh, uh-huh. Everything okay? Uh-huh. She was just saying that because I would just get so frustrated and angry, that things weren't working. I was paying money for it. And man, I mean, I must have spent like $1,000, like at least $100 a month on phone calls at that time, and geez, it's just one of those things with a long distance relationship. Now it's easier, you can get a nice cell phone, but it all depends where the girl lives. Even here in Acacia, our cell signal is kind of low here, but it works. It only works if I could hook it into the Wi-Fi. So what I found, after my wife moved and all that, I didn't have to deal with any of this phone stuff. She used to call home periodically. We'd get a phone card, or we'd go to Skype. And Skype you can still do. It's relatively cheap. Skype's not too bad for calling the Philippines. It's one of the cheaper ones actually. They don't gouge you too badly, and you can always refill it. Skype is just a problem with me because if you lose your password or whatever, you can't get into it. Like I wanted to cancel or something. I forgot my password. The guy said it'll take like 30 days to retrieve it. Oh man, I don't have time for that. But they were good, and I got to cancel it or whatever. This was like a month ago. But I was just using it in the U.S. For domestic stuff. But they're still pretty good for international, but they are very good with frauds. They only allow you to upload so much cash. And then you have to watch your credit card because they'll flag it as fraudulent because a lot of people steal it, then they use it or sell it to call around the world or what have you. So, that's, I don't know, it's one of those things. You just have to kind of deal with it if you want to deal with Skype. And they're good. I mean, they're fine. Their quality is pretty good. And then, that's just one of those things. But one of those things you just kind of have to deal with when you're, in a foreign country or what have you. But the Philippines is just so expensive. Just dealing with all, especially with telecom and internet, they're very expensive. The quality of the internet has improved. I don't know about the cell phone thing, but in any event, what I was really kind of thinking about, in my brain, wrapping my head around this before I left was, how I was going to deal with this. And so when I hadn't bought, a cell phone in quite a while, I just went with the cheapest cell phone I could get. And I'm not really a cell phone guy. I don't really need an expensive cell phone, but, not this Christmas, but, kind of as we were preparing to go to the Philippines, I started researching it because we got a little extra money and we hadn't had cell phones in a while, and we were looking to make a channel and also, maybe go international. And I said, well, we need a pretty good phone for that. What's going to work in all these different countries? And, as I started researching, I found out that there were a lot of phones that were region locked, which means US locked, Asia locked, Europe locked, for Samsung, for iPhones, and all these different kinds of things. Excuse me. And so I was like, what should I do? And so one of the phones that seemed to completely have no strings attached to it was the Google phone. And, they've been making the Google phone for a little while. I knew about it. And I said, well, maybe that's the phone for us. It seems like you can take it anywhere in the world. It's not locked anywhere. Just, you can just use it. And I said, yeah, okay. They didn't have great deals on the Google phone. I just had to pay up for it. That was the Pixel 3 XL. We went for the larger phone. And personally, I could have went with the smaller one. But, Priscilla loves watching on her phone. Hey, that's great. My eyes, you can see my eyes can't handle it anymore. I've done a lot of computer work in the past, and I'm just not into that kind of thing. But, I got the XL too. And hey, the picture is great. The screen is great. But I got it so we could use it in different places. Anyway, as I was researching all this, I came across what I consider to be a really, really, really great phone plan for international travelers. And that was Google Fi. And I started thinking about it, and I said, man, this sounds pretty good. Now, of course, I had T-Mobile. And I looked up T-Mobile. You get an international plan. You just call up. You can also get it with Sprint. Sprint is pretty good with their international plan. I don't know about Verizon. I didn't really look into that, but it seemed like T-Mobile and Sprint were pretty good with their plans. Because I was literally looking for a data plan to take abroad. Because in the U.S., I was just using my unlimited plan for everything, including internet. I was like, man, I'm paying $100. Why can't I use it? And there are ways, you can kind of do hotspots and things like that to make it work. So that's what I was doing. I was using actually Metro PCS, which is one of those carriers that's linked over to T-Mobile, and it worked fine in our area, which way out there. Um, it was a pretty bad signal, but hey, it worked for us. It was okay. We just happened to be in a dead zone. It had nothing to do with Metro or T-Mobile. Everybody's cell phone was kind of down. I remember trying to get in pizza delivery, and this is, where I grew up, and the people were like, well, GPS doesn't even work here because the towers are whatnot. They haven't put it in there, and the internet companies are even putting the cable in. My mother had been one of the first to get cable TV in the area, because we had a huge mountain behind the whole area. We didn't even get signals in for TV, and she went door to door subscriptions and got it in there. But now they're the only one that will do internet in our area, and it's just terrible. And so is the cell phone signal. So anyway, we got the phones. The phones were okay. We didn't get any good deal with them, but they came and they were okay. They work fine. They can get eSIM or regular SIM, which to me was pretty good. But I guess if you have two SIM card holders, which some cell phones do, like Samsung, you can just plug them in or take them out. But the eSIM card seemed kind of interesting. But anyway, we got the phones and put our Metro PCS in there. Had to go down to the store, because I don't know, Metro is kind of a pain with that. They have to put in a code or something like that. So we paid a few bucks and got it done instead of doing it over the phone. Went in there. But after a few months, as we started inching closer and closer to this big move to the Philippines, I was like, man, we're going to need a way for my mother, my parents, my relatives, for companies to call us or text message us. And I was like, how are we going to do this? Because I've been here before. I know the problems with it before. It's going to be very expensive unless I can kind of figure it out. And I was researching all that, like I said, with T-Mobile and Sprint. They seem pretty good. And I was like, hey, man, I get a good deal with Sprint. Maybe I should switch over. And then, I came across Google Fi. And I said, hey, listen, that's why I got the phone. Maybe the plan will work. And so I got it in the U.S. And, hey, the plan, I think it was only $15 when I started. Now it's $20. But in any event, I got it right here on my phone. You can just Google Fi and everything comes up. And, Google runs it, so it's okay. It's an okay plan. They don't run it. They basically are connected with other cell phone companies. The one great advantage of Google Fi is that if you have a Google phone or an approved, sort of phone that goes with Google Fi, it'll switch to the strongest signal in the area. And that is one of the strengths of the plan. So you're not like, sort of hamstrung or kind of, controlled by AT&T. If it has a weak signal, the phone will switch over. Okay, if you have a good Android phone, if it's approved of, it'll switch over. But you have to kind of check on that. Better coverage in your favorite places with three mobile networks. Data abroad for the same price as home and no setup required. Well, that's what really interested me, was that I could get data abroad, I could get, phone abroad, and not even like have to get anything approved of or what have you. So I tried it in the US. It worked fine. It wasn't any better than Metro in my area because we just don't have good signal. In the other areas, it was fast. The only problem is after you go over a certain gigabyte, I think it's 15, 16, some people say 19, it just slows to a crawl. It's like one of those old systems. It dies bad. And you have to be really careful, because if you go over a certain amount of gigabytes, and they charge you like, I'll have to look on this a little bit further, but they started charging you if you go into these gigabyte things, like $10 a gigabyte or something, thing like that. And so, I mean, sometimes I'd forget to turn it off. I'd forget to switch it back to Metro, and I'd be like a $70 bill. But I was kind of, it happened to me twice. I was kind of not too happy about it. Okay. But I mean, that's what happens when you experiment. I forgot to turn it off and it just kept using data or something like that because I was using it for my computers. And sometimes I had to use it in my area anyway because my other connection wasn't working. So, one of those things. But in any event, the plans right now, if you connect it, and I'm doing it right now, and I'm just going to do it for one person. For one person, for unlimited, okay, and they changed the plans now. Before it just used to be flexible for one. They didn't have unlimited. So for unlimited, it's $70 for one. For 3 it's 50, for 2 it's 60, and for 1 it's 70. Oh, I didn't want that. And what do you get here for that? You got unlimited data up to 22 gigabytes per person, and free text, free data and text while traveling. And see, that's what really got me going. Free calls to 50 countries and territories at 1 cent a minute. And you get Google One membership, which is, I don't know, a lot of people, but you get sort of 100 gigabytes in cloud storage. And you get some assistance if you need help with something, right? Now, if you have a phone, of course, with 2 SIM slots, you can just switch back and forth. And that's what I would recommend if you're going to be traveling to the Philippines and back or moving to the Philippines. It's best to have the 2 SIM cards. In the US, they're kind of hard to find. I think Samsung has some of those. I think the Galaxy has some. I don't know. You got to kind of look it out because the US is not real. In Europe, they're very common. In Asia, they're common because you're going between networks. But in the US, they're not very common. But you can find one. But with the Google phone, you have the eSIM plus the hard SIM, or the physical SIM. And so we had the Metro PCS, and I was able to get the eSIM sort of downloaded from Google. And that's what I really wanted to try out. I wanted to see if I could do both. So, it worked. They kind of zanged me for a little bucks in trying it, which I need to move on from. I need to move on, but I can't. But it worked, right? And I said, I was going to cancel the plan because I was paying like $15 a month and I wasn't using it. I said, I want to keep this number. So what I did, like I said, with the security and all that stuff, is right before I left, I called up, I went online to all my credit card companies and updated them with my new phone number. They send you, the text message out, blah, blah, blah. So that seems to be really important. So like when I'm going online from the Philippines to access my account, they'll text message, I give them the code, I can access on the internet. Otherwise, you wouldn't be, I guess you have to call or whatever. I know some people do, they chat through a chat window. Maybe they give their priority code or whatever they're doing. I just love the convenience of having that right with me. So what happens is because I have 2 SIM cards, I can switch back to my Google Fi, which is an eSIM, or even if you had two slots for a physical SIM, you could just go into your settings, switch back to that one, and you can just start receiving stuff right away. It's working great for me so far. So, I've gotten these messages from my parents, from relatives, from, the credit card companies and stuff like that, when I have to access my money, which is kind of important when you move abroad, because when you want to transfer money or something like that, you need that. Sometimes they send the code, the verification code, and you need to do it. And so it's really convenient. I don't have to call. I don't have to talk to anybody. It works great. It's instantaneous, as soon as I switch over on the SIM. So that worked really, really well, and it has worked really well. And I've been very good this time with showing off my data. Now, I'm on the flexible, and let me see here. I'm on the flexible for one, which is $20 a month plus $10 a gigabyte for data. And when you go to 6 after I forget how much it is. After 6 gigabytes, it's free for the month. which really isn't that good because when you start getting to 6 gigabytes, you're basically almost reaching the slowdown stage, and it just it just slows so much down. But hey, I would have access to 6 gigabytes abroad, but I don't think it would be true 4G speed. I think they slow it down. I mean, I could try it. I haven't done that yet because I don't want to spend the money. But and I could do that if I had to. If I was in an area, I could try it. So I'm getting unlimited calls and texts. But here's the thing, which really works out great. I have Wi-Fi calling capability, and that has made all the difference. So I'm calling back to the U.S. It's going right through my Wi-Fi, and I have fiber optic Wi-Fi, and it's from Sky Cable here, and it's working great. So when I call, it goes right through. The phone connection is great. It works awesome. And it's totally free. If I called, I think a regular call, depending on how I do it, they charge me a small amount, I think, very small. But with the Wi-Fi calling enabled, it's totally free for me. So it's kind of like making, a Facebook live call or a messenger, whatever you want to call it, on Facebook Messenger, or doing a Viber call, but it's to the person's phone. It isn't through the app. And so for like my parents who don't use apps, that's kind of important because they wouldn't know how to use it. And for companies that I'm calling, they're not going to be on an app. So that has worked out extremely well. Now, as opposed to like the last time I came from the Philippines, was making international calls. Man, it would just be like, network is busy. Call back later. You just get that same voice. My wife said the lady was in the magazine, the woman who got the voice for, oh man, you hate hearing that voice over and over again in the Philippines. But I know a lot of people here. It is so annoying, and it just gets you like your blood boiling, So Google Fi, I haven't had that trouble. I mean, a few times. But usually it's because I input the number in wrong. And so far, I don't have to put the country code in. I just put one in the number, and it dials like the U.S. number. So it's working fabulously right now. Like I said, I have to call because, I canceled and they said I didn't, So I got to do that. But right now, if I go into my settings, and it's different for each one, but I just click network and internet. Then it goes to mobile network. I click on 2 SIMs, and my Google Fi is active. I click on it. It tells me I've used 24.84 megabytes. Okay. Now, technically, I think I could shut down my mobile data, and I wouldn't use anything. So I really have to. We're just kind of figuring this out, but this is working. The Google Fi is working really, really well. But let me go for the international rates. And see what it comes up with. So it's covered, but it's not giving. Oh, yeah. So it's saying 20 cents a minute. Well, that's not so great. But I mean, if you have the Wi-Fi calling, it's free. So it's not that big of a deal. Texting unlimited. And you can also call internationally from the U.S. But yeah, 20 cents a minute isn't that great. But if you're calling from the U.S. and you just want something to call the Philippines with, I don't think the rate's going to be so great. But I mean, it'd be good for kind of emergencies. Oh no, mobile is 12 cents if you're calling from the U.S. Well, that's not too bad. Landline is 9 cents. It says Philippine special services 42 cents. I don't know what the heck that is. But landline 9, mobile 12. Not great, but not too bad. And that's what it says here. So it's 20 cents a minute. if I want to make calls here, But so far, the Wi-Fi calling, as far as I know, has been free. So I hope that is the case. But I can check my account or something like that, and I'll give an update on that. When the bill comes in, it comes in 2 days, so I can see like what happened there. But as far as I know, when I looked it up last time, the Wi-Fi calling was free. The one thing I wanted to look up for you guys, we still got a few minutes here before we hit the 30-minute mark, was here is the phones. And so the phones designed for Google, you have the Moto G7, and I forget the Nokia. The Nokia seem to be the cheapest Google Fi approved phones, like $100, $200. So if you're looking to go abroad and get a cheap plan to call home, if you're going to be abroad for a long time, going not just to the Philippines but different countries, you could get a Nokia phone, and they're great phones. They're tough, and they will go with Google Fi. Now the other ones, the Motos and stuff, they're kind of cheap, but they're a little more expensive. Now, the iPhones are approved of, but Google Fi is in beta for iPhones. And to be frank, since they're probably in competition, I don't know how good the conversion process will be, but you can use Google Fi with an iPhone. And you can click on, if you go to Google Fi there and check it out, you can do it. Now, what I can do, they have an app also that you have to put on your phone. And let's see. It says things may be delayed by like 3 months or something. Now, you have to be a little careful with the Google Fi, especially if someone steals your phone, because you are on a contract plan. So you have to be kind of careful with that. Now they're telling me I only have 0.02 gigabytes, which I'm really, really happy about. Here's Wi-Fi voice call, so I'm going to have to check that out when the time comes. But we're going to see what my bill is, because I did make some calls home, and I hope everything is not too expensive. But we're going to see. But you can always check the apps and things of that nature. But so far, so good. So the bill's in 2 days. I can give you an update when that occurs, and hopefully it's not too expensive. And right now I'm going to use it to call the U.S., but I don't see any other way unless I use Skype to really have a U.S. number and have people leave messages for me, unless I keep a Skype number. And like I said, I'm not such a great person with Skype. I don't really like it that much. I like this much better, but we're going to see what the cost is, when the time comes. And, I have a plan here in the Philippines for $20, and this would be 20, so it gets me up to 40. But I may go down with my Philippine SIM card, next month, because I don't think I really need all the data. I'm not really, there's always free Wi-Fi or something. And that's the one thing I wanted to say, that, especially in the U.S., Google Fi is a great option for people that are always around Wi-Fi. If you need unlimited plan for your Wi-Fi at home because you don't have Wi-Fi, it's going to kill you. But if you have Wi-Fi everywhere, it's not a bad plan. So that's some things to consider, especially if you're always going abroad back and forth. The one thing I don't like is, you're kind of caught on that idea. It's a contract, and I don't like those contracts. If they hit you for roaming or something like that. But, we'll see what happens. The phone will come in. I'm confident it won't be that bad. And anyway, the service so far has been great. It's worked for me. I've got my text message and everything worked out. I'm kind of in it for the long haul anyway. So, we're going to close it out with that. I hope you guys got something out of this. You'll learn something. And next time, I'm going to talk a little bit about Philippine phone cards, how to refill them, and SIM cards as well. So take care. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.